Molly Cash. I'm the COO of the ISA. We are thrilled to be here with Tabby Biddle tonight. I originally met Tabby at the WRAP mentor session during the Power Women Summit, and she was fantastic, and I learned a lot, and I dug deep, and I explored some things that I thought were pretty amazing that I didn't know I was going to do. So I thought that this would be a really great thing for everybody to experience. I know that you're all going to learn a lot and have a lot of fun, and I'm excited for her to be here with us. So thank you, Tabby, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. It's great to be here.
I want to talk a little bit about this event in general. Was started about 7 years ago at this point, as a way to bring the community together, as a way for people to meet each other, to make new friends, new connections, have people to rely on and carry with them through this crazy journey of what it is to be a screenwriter and a filmmaker. And I think that now is just as important, if not more important than ever, to make these connections, to have somebody to talk to and to lean on. We have been through a really challenging, difficult year. And everybody on the planet is going through it, which is pretty incredible. And everybody has a different experience of it and is feeling different things, processing their emotions differently. We're all going through things like sadness and fear and loss and pain and hope. And it's important, I think, to take the time to really process that and examine what's happening, and don't do it by yourself. You aren't by yourself. Everybody is a part of a community, and hopefully you have someone you can talk to, family, friends, somebody you've just met, a professional, anybody that you can lean on for a little support during this time. And if you feel great, and if you've done all of the work and you're like, I'm good, first of all, amazing. Kudos to you for that. But then also reach out to those people, because everybody might not be okay in your circles. And tonight is a little bit about that too. You're going to make some new friends tonight. You're going to share with some people that you've never met, and some people that you have. And so please take the opportunity to find some new friends and make some new connections. I'm going to thank our sponsors, because we have some really cool prizes tonight to give out. So please go ahead and tweet on Twitter the favorite tidbit you've learned tonight, something that you want to take with you, something you've learned, anything about tonight's event. Tweet it and tag us at Network ISA. And then all of those people will be thrown into a hat, so to speak, and we'll select a bunch of winners, and you'll be notified in the next couple of days if you've won. And our sponsors are Page Turner Screenplays, Script to Comic, and Entourage. And so here's some of the stuff you're going to get. Script to Comic contest is giving away 5 free entries. So Men in Black, Kingsman, Old Boy, The Walking Dead, they all started as comics. Writers submit your screenplays, teleplay, short script, comic script, or short story to the 2021 Script to Comic contest. And it's live now, and you have a chance to have it brought to life as a comic book series or a graphic novel, and published by one of the top indie publishers in comics. Side note, everybody on this call, everybody gets $5 off their entry for a limited time. Script2comic.com. That's the number 2, script2comic.com. And you will have to use the code CONNECT5. Okay, Page Turner, a script so compelling or exciting that a reader is unable to put it down. That's exactly what Page Turner Screenplay Competition is looking for. Regardless of gender, age, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or economic background, Page Turner is focused on finding and supporting great original stories with a strong voice that grip the reader from the first page to the last. The mission is to help screenwriters through writing competitions where they are read by professional working writers who give honest professional feedback on their scripts. So they are giving out 5 free entries tonight. And then Entourage is offering 2 prizes for their Industry Next initiative, which supports filmmakers and writers of underrepresented communities, for a chance to win a mentorship meeting with an incredible lineup, including an executive at Marvel, partner at Worldwide Production Agency, vice president of production at A&E, producer at Insecure. I can go on and on. They are also offering one winner an all-day pass to enjoy Hollywood Chills 14, a 2-weekend virtual entertainment summit in April, and 2 raffle winners to be entered into their Chat for Hope campaign with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And with that, you vie for a chance to have a Zoom meeting with either actress Natalie Emmanuel from the Fast and the Furious franchise and Game of Thrones, or actor Jack Black. And we all know who he is, I hope. Okay, so that was a lot. Thanks for staying with me.
Hello, my name is Felicity. I'm the VP of Development with the ISA. So it means I get to read lots of lovely scripts, and I care a lot about the ISA community. And my message tonight is to everyone that has an ISA profile. I just wanted to talk very quickly about taking the time to present your best face to the world when you are writing your ISA profile. Please just take a moment to make it as gorgeous as you are. Use it as your calling card, add all your scripts, make them available on the showcase, add a poster image, add a personal video if you're ISA Connect, then really hone your log lines and your synopsis so that if one of the over 5,000, there's lots of them, industry people on the site are looking for material, they can be enticed by your ideas and you have them clearly out for them to look at. For your bio, add a photo and start with the writer you are and the writer you want to be, and discuss the stories you want to tell and the characters you are drawn to write and why. Then as producers or industry folk click through the website, they not only see you and your face, but they also know who you are as a writer. Also, if you're applying for writing gigs, the person posting the writing gigs not only sees the stuff you send them, they can also check you out and click on your ISA profile. So you want them to see all your award wins, all your success stories, and your wonderful, smiling, beautiful face looking like someone they want to work with. Don't be embarrassed to say who you are. Your work and you are worth the extra effort to make your profile shine. So I think there's a lot today. I think we're going to be talking about like really kind of finding your voice and knowing who you are as a person, accepting that. Put it in your profile too. We want to see you. We want to hear. We want to know your voice. And that is my end speech on the ISA profile.
So I just want to reiterate a little bit what Molly was saying, is not to put too much pressure on yourself too right now. I mean, we're all very excited about the vaccine, and then there's spring coming and all that. So the anticipation of a normal year is overwhelming as it is, but the idea of getting vaccinated and getting back to a somewhat normal life feels heavier than usual. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to write endlessly, but take some time for yourself. We've made some changes to the site to help you along if you want to spend some time reading some of the articles or listening to the podcasts. Check out our ISA Insider page. There's a ton of material on there, and that's one of the ways that I've improved as a writer, is having read a lot of those articles. I'm listening to podcasts. Max is a great teacher, and he's got a bunch of stuff on there. And it's most of it, the majority of it is free. So there's opportunity to improve your craft. Even if you can't spend the time to dive into writing right now, listen to a podcast. There are some that are in there that are great for just relaxing and absorbing some awesome information. We'll be adding the Wrap on there, and Movie Maker magazine, Script magazine. So there's all sorts of even more great information coming. Plus, as Felicity was mentioning about the profiles, we're redoing all of that. So it's going to be there in the future, in the coming months, you're going to see some huge improvements to the profile and how you can present your screenplays. So, take the time to accumulate that, start compiling information and posting it on the site. It's only going to get better.
Hi, everybody. I am Shayna Weber, I can't remember my title, Senior Manager of Production and Events, I think. I don't know. I work for ISA. So welcome. And we are super excited tonight to have our special guest here with us, who popped up on screen, Tabby Biddle. She is an internationally acclaimed women's leadership coach. And if you guys would like to check out her book, Find Your Voice, you can find it on Amazon. Go to her website. And instead of me just sort of reading a bio, Tabby, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what you do. Give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's so
lovely to be here, and I can feel what a supportive community it is already from those introductions. So that makes me very happy. So for many of you who don't know me, I'm Tabby Biddle, and as Shana said, I'm a women's leadership coach and consultant, and educator and writer and editor. I'm the founder of a company called Tab Media, which centers women's voices through public speaking, through writing, and through entrepreneurship. I'm also the co-founder of 50 Women Can Change the World in Media and Entertainment, which was an incredible program that was initiated a couple of years ago to build an ecosystem within Hollywood for women to support one another and open up to one another in ways that maybe they traditionally didn't think they could in Hollywood, being such a male-dominated industry. So it's been very rewarding and incredible, the leaps and bounds that the women who are in the program have gone since that program. I am also a two-time United Nations Press Fellow, writing on women's rights and amplifying the voices of women and girls. And my background really lies in the intersection of women's leadership, feminine spirituality, and social change. So I'm really excited to talk more about this and how this relates to your voice and how I can support you in becoming more confident with your voice and more comfortable in stepping into the spotlight from a place that feels really good to you, a place that feels authentic to you, to help you claim more of your power and start to actually enjoy being in the spotlight. And I know for some of you, it's like, wow, enjoy it, no way, right? But obviously you want to get your work out there. So, and there's a reason why you're here tonight. So I'm here to support you with that.
Amazing. So before we kind of dive into you and what you do, I just want to preface and maybe talk a little bit about, obviously ISA is a community of both men and women, and we love both equally. And although you're a women's leadership coach, how does what you do, how do we not alienate men from this conversation? I just want to kind of set the tone early on that you work with women mainly, but how can we just make sure that that the male gender does not feel like this is not a conversation for them?
Yeah, that's a really important question, Shana. Thanks for bringing that up right away. So for the men here, absolutely welcome. I talk a lot about the feminine principle and feminine energy and feminine leadership. And an important thing for the men here to know is that the feminine energy that I'll be talking about also lives within you. And it helps you become more of who you are, right? We're all this blend of masculine and feminine energy. I'm not going to dive into that right at this moment, but just knowing that what I'm speaking about is really to help all of us become more full human beings and to be able to tap into more of your potential, as well as you're going to learn some things about collaborating with women in the industry and different ways to do that you might not have thought about before. So I think it's going to help you as well in those realms. As well as, I mean, the find your voice things that we're speaking about. I mean, it's not just women who struggle with that, right? Some men struggle with that as well, and being in the spotlight. So you're going to learn things there as well. So while I'll be speaking a lot from the feminine perspective, please know that this is intended for everyone. And that everyone can benefit by learning more about the feminine principle and feminine energy and feminine leadership.
Great, thank you. I think that was important to sort of set that at the very beginning so that we are aware. So one of my main questions for you, and I always like to ask this at the beginning, why do you do what you do? And was there a catalyst and this is, writer where we go. We're like, wait, what's the catalyst? What happened? What's the thing? Was there an event or something that happened to you, or something that you remember vividly that kind of led you on this path?
Yeah, I always find that a challenging question, because there, like most people, there was an evolution and there were many steps on the path, but I'm happy to share some of them because of course the context is very important for what we're speaking about today. So I would start first with the fact that as a young girl in my family, I was the only girl, youngest of 2 older brothers and many male cousins. And I generally felt less listened to and less valued and less considered in comparison to the boys. So this was both in the family, and then of course, culturally, this is quite common for many girls and women. So that's definitely one aspect to my work. And then in college, when I went to college, I had a turning point where I was taking a class in government. It was Government 101. And I was sitting in the lecture hall, and the professor was up on stage speaking about how in our democracy, how important our voice is, right? And he literally said the words, "Your voice matters." And I was like, my voice matters. And I lit up, and I realized I'd never heard those words before. No one ever told me. Here I was at that point, 18 or 19. No one ever had told me that my voice matters. So I really took those words to heart. And so much so that by the end of the week, I switched my major from English to government.
Wow.
And I began to pursue a career path in politics. So that was one turning point. Then another turning point was that after college, I moved to Washington, D.C., and I began my career path in politics. And I was working for an organization to get more women elected to Congress. And we were very successful with this, which was very exciting. But then at the end of the election cycle, I had to decide what steps I was going to take next, right? And at that point, I looked at the people ahead of me, as we often do when we're thinking about our career path. We look at those in front of us. And I had this aha moment of, do I want to be like those people in front of me, which I saw very much as divisive and cutthroat and manipulative. And of course, this wasn't everyone, but this was the majority. And this was really kind of the energy and environment there at the time. And of course, we know it still persists. And so I decided, no, I'm not going to continue down this path. And so I switched to journalism, and I got hired by the National Geographic Society. And one day an editor, she approached me to talk about an article I'd written. And she said, Tabby, this is good, but we want to hear more of your voice. Mm. And I was like, more of my voice? I learned in journalism to be objective, right? And that we're really presenting the different sides, but keeping ourselves out of it. She said, yeah, but this piece is a little different. And I want to hear more of your voice, your perspective, your opinion. And I was like, oh, my voice, right? I'm like, what does my voice sound like? And
right,
what is my opinion? And oh my gosh, like if I express any of this, what are people going to think of me? Or are my colleagues not going to like me? Or, those old scripts and stories that I didn't even realize that were there until that moment where I really froze. And that was a wake-up call to realize I had no idea what my voice sounded like, right? And I was in my early mid-20s at this point. And it eventually got to a point where my body started speaking to me, and I started to get these severe back pains, low back pains, that were a bit mysterious. Like there was no reason why I should have been having these pains, and the doctors couldn't figure it out, and no one could figure out what was going on. And eventually what happened is
I heard this inner voice say, you know, you got to go, like, you got to get out of here. You got to move beyond the four walls of the office and you've got to go explore in the world. And so that was another big turning point. So what I did, I listened to that inner voice and I bought a backpack and I bought a ticket to Nepal. And I went for a 9-month adventure in Nepal and all through Southeast Asia as an experiment to live from my intuitive voice, my inner voice. Like, what would that be like if I did that? Now, I guess it's important to tell you that prior to that, Shayna, I was super type A, like very organized, everything super scheduled in my life. And so to make this decision to go and experiment, what would it be like to live from my inner voice? That was a big jump, but I knew it had to be done because I knew that I was in some way suffering. On the outside, everything looked great. You know, I had a good job, I had great colleagues and friends and was making a good salary and so forth, but something was really knocking on my door to move on out. And the reason why it's so important to share is that on that journey, through Southeast Asia, Nepal, and so forth, I fell very deeply into yoga and Buddhism and meditation. So much so that the following year, I went for 6 months over to India. And it was in India, in Dharamsala, India, where the Tibetan government in exile lives. It was there that I learned about the goddess Tara. Okay, and she's significant here because the goddess Tara, she represents the mother energy, the feminine principle, right? The divine feminine in Tibetan Buddhism. And the Tibetans absolutely respect and revere her. And this was a big wake up because I had never experienced that reverence for a female before. Now, grant you, she's more of a mythological character, but also has embodiments and personifications and so forth. But she's considered the mother of all Buddhas. She's a bodhisattva of compassion. Right. So I learned a lot about her as well as the other goddesses in the Hindu and yoga pantheon. And this was all new coming from the Western culture, even though I didn't grow up in a very religious background by any means. But I had never been exposed to goddesses and feminine energy and the divine feminine and the feminine principle and all of that. It was all so new for me. And so that's a big piece here. So just getting to because I know we have a lot of good questions to go through. So to jump to how I got where I am now, eventually 10 years later, back in the US, having moved here to Santa Monica from New York City, I got up one morning and went to go put on one of my favorite t-shirts, and instead of just throwing it on, for some reason, I paused and I looked at it, and it had a peace symbol on it. And the words underneath said, "Don't fight." And I looked at that and I just got this warm feeling inside. I was like, we should have more of these shirts. Like, this is such a great message, right? Peace, don't fight. Simple, great. And then I heard this voice that said, you should make those t-shirts. You should do that. And the voice it was like an inner voice, but it was also like this other voice. And the next message that came to me was that, if you really want peace in the world, the only way to achieve that is to create a balance between the masculine and the feminine. And it's like, whoa, okay.
Like, how do I do that?
Right? Yeah. And but the idea was a balance between the masculine and feminine, both within ourselves
Mhm.
and within our worldly leadership.
Right.
Right. And so what I did, I launched a yoga clothing line that was based on goddesses. And the idea was to help women remember themselves as goddesses, right? To help women connect with their divine feminine. And the first goddess who wanted to come on the shirt was indeed Tara. So
Right.
she holds great significance in the work that I do now. And anyway, there's so much more to the story, but the relevance there is that through launching this yoga clothing line, I had to do a ton of writing for, all the copy on the website, writing a newsletter, writing all the backstory of the goddesses for the clothing tags. I started a blog called the Goddess Diaries, which was speaking about my awakening to the feminine, as well as the intersection of feminine spirituality and social change. And through that, someone at the editor of the Huffington Post learned about my writing, invited me to blog there. Then my platform grew. Then the United Nations Foundation approached me to apply for a press fellowship to report at the UN General Assembly about issues affecting women and girls around the world. And so things just kind of blossomed from there.
Mhm.
And my dedication became to helping women remember themselves as goddesses, as well as helping them to find their voice, their authentic voice, in the way that I did through my journey. It really took awakening to the feminine and connecting with the feminine for me to find my voice. I really, as soon as I launched that yoga clothing line, I was writing the newsletters and the blogs and, writing for the Huff Post and UN Foundation. I had no problem expressing myself.
Right.
So I think that's a really important piece for us here, for the women here, that we can talk about further. But that leads me to where I am today.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like part of that journey was always listening, one, to the inner voice, and following through and continuing forward and moving yourself forward in confidence and, letting go sometimes. So let's specifically talk about voice. When you say find your voice, what is your voice? And is your voice, like some people think that their voice, that's their accomplishments or the things that they've done or that they've succeeded at. But what is your voice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great question. From my perspective, your voice is any way you express yourself. So that might be through writing, that might be through singing, that might be through dancing, it might be through painting, it might be through putting together events, it might be through architecture, it might be through science, and right. It's really, speaking, right? Public speaking. It's really any way that you express yourself and your values in the world, right? So I think you talked about accomplishment, Shayna, is it your accomplishments? Well, I think it's a means to your accomplishments, but I don't think it's your accomplishments. I mean, your voice offers a transmission in the world. And that transmission comes from your insides. It comes from your body, and it comes from what you're here to do in the world, your purpose, your dharma, and your values, right? What you want to see in the world. So
How do you know the difference between what you think your voice is, what you're used to expressing, and your authentic voice?
Yeah. Okay. So I love that question. I would say journaling is the primary way to find that out, because we know, so many of us, right, we put on a public voice, and for some of us, for so long,
we do that and we don't really know our authentic voice. So that would have been the case. That's why I told that piece of my story that, you know, there I was as a young career woman, and I thought I'd been a leader, I'd been in leadership positions, all sorts of, but I didn't realize I didn't really know my voice, right? And so one of the great strategies to find out the difference between your authentic voice, that inner voice that sits deep within your body, your soul, and the voice that you present to the world, and are they the same? Because some of you, they might be already lined up. But for others, if you're questioning that, I would begin a daily journaling practice for 10, 15 minutes max. You don't need to go for too long. You know, in the morning, I really consider such a sacred time when you're not bombarded by everything that's going on in your daily life. So you know, maybe for some of you have to get up a little bit, 10 minutes earlier. But doing a journaling practice where you're writing about how you feel. You're right. It's not about what you did today or this or that. It's like, how do you feel right now? And just start going and writing and see. I mean, you're all writers here, right? So, you know, see what comes out, but there doesn't need to be a plan or a purpose or characters or, you know, anything like that. It's really expressing your truth. And maybe you do end up start talking about like, oh, you know, I really wish for this, or I want to see this in the world, or I want to see this in my career. Well, that's true to you, right? So, you know, go for that. It's really about an unedited experience, with the purpose simply being that you want to hear your voice.
And sometimes, I mean, I find when I don't journal for a long time and then I come back to it, I sometimes have to start by writing the brain dump of the things that I'm doing or just random stuff. I mean, I've even written the same sentence like over and over, not like The Shining, but, you know, like written out the same thing just to get it out of the way. Yes. Then I'm making room. So when you do start journaling, everybody, give yourself a little bit of grace when you're beginning, because it's not the easiest thing to do, to just dive right into those feelings. So
that's right. There might be a lot of junk. Exactly, Shana.
Yeah.
There might be a lot of junk there that you just got to get it out. And that's why the daily practice is nice, because you can eventually, what happens, you start getting to the real stuff sooner. Once you've had a practice of staying consistent.
So how do you think that kind of practice would help screenwriters or writers in general with their craft? Do you think that getting that stuff out of your brain and maybe out onto the page in an unedited way helps you make room? Or how do you think that those work together?
Yeah, so a couple pieces to that. I think number one, as a writer, it's really important to know what what you're going for, what kind of stories you want to be putting forward. And so that is really important, to be connected to your inner voice. Like, what do you want to put more of in the world? Like maybe for some of you, it is more laughter, love, and joy. And so you're aiming more toward comedy, or maybe, you know, for others of you, gender equality and racial equality, prison reform and the environment, or whatever it might be. Like I think it gets you as a writer to really get tuned into what you care about, so that your work, what you're writing, your screenplays, are in alignment with what you value, right? And then you become more powerful, and you feel more confident when you show up at a meeting, or when you're, you know, pitching yourself, or where you're meeting with colleagues, or, you know, and then someone says, hey, let me introduce you to so-and-so, because your convictions are so strong, not in like a righteous way, but in a way that feels totally aligned and in tune with who you are at your core. So that's how I think the journaling helps, because it gets you to be more true to who you are on the inside, so that you're writing. I mean, we know as writers, you're going inside a lot. You know, that the creativity is blossoming from there. But it certainly can happen to all of us, right? When we get stuck and what's going on, what's happening, why can't I find my voice? Why can't I write? That's when you have to go deeper in. And that's where the journaling, I think, is really powerful for screenwriters.
Right. And then, and kind of on that same path, for writers, since we are somewhat introverted and we find our way on the page, essentially, what's some advice for writers who are trying to take that strength that they have, essentially, in their words, and bring it to a meeting, or bring it out into the world in networking, or trying to meet new people, or creating a team, maybe to go make a film? Are there some ways that that writers can use, that really great ability to put something on the page into their outward life?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the first things I think is being in initially some comfortable groups that you feel safe in, speaking about what you're writing about, letting yourself be really excited, enthusiastic, speaking about it with people you feel safe with at first, because it can feel like a huge jump to go from the page to then this meeting where you're pitching yourself and you don't really know people, right? So I would do the smaller steps, because then once that's what this group is about, right? Is about having a network of other writers who can have your back, and can support you. So I would, if you're not already in a group of like a small group, I'm talking about a small group of writers that you can kind of practice with ahead, or just simply share your excitement about what you're writing about, so that you can receive that real world feedback, live feedback and encouragement, to have that like coded in your body, that like, okay, there are people who are listening to me, and you can remember how excited you were just to speak about what you're writing, or the project vision that you have. So that would be my number one advice, is make sure you have a group of trusted advisors, right? And speak about those things with them. The other thing, and this is kind of, I'm sure most of you have heard of this, what I'm about to say, but if you're not already doing it, I'm going to suggest trying an affirmation before you go into a meeting, that can speak to what some of your doubts or insecurities might be. So it might be something as simple as, I belong here, right? I belong here. Or, what I have to say matters. Just in your own mind, like just one thing to kind of calm your nervous system and give you a boot, like let you have your back.
I love that. It gave, like, when you started saying that, it honestly just sort of gave me those chills, those like really great chills. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start doing that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's simple, right? And it works. So for anyone who's like, that sounds, silly or woo-woo or whatever, try it.
Yeah, try it.
I find, for myself, I mean, it still happens, depending on who I'm presenting to or so forth, right? I give myself affirmations. It's like, oh, right. Or the last piece. So I said, meeting with a small group of trusted advisors, affirmation that's going to speak to some doubt or insecurity you might be feeling. And then the third is to set an intention. So before you go into a meeting, or maybe it's a networking event, to set an intention for yourself to, and we're dealing with with what you said is moving from introversion to extroversion. Set an intention that maybe my intention is to just be me and have fun, right? Instead of like, my intention, I need to meet this person and that person, and that creates a lot of pressure and awkwardness, right?
And failure. Ultimately, you set it too high, then, I'm going to meet 10 people. Like, if you meet 5, you failed. Right. So what, couldn't it just be, you know, my intention is just to be me and have fun.
Yeah.
My intention is to, I don't know,
Connect with somebody about,
yes, connect with someone, whatever the topic you're writing on, right?
Mhm.
Or it might be, I mean, more so, I'm going for like the more inner intention, because
Okay.
I think that helps calm the nerves. So you know, my intention is to connect with someone deeply tonight.
Mhm.
Right. That might not be for all of you, but you know, for some of you, if that's right, because introverts tend to, right, they want a little more the intimacy, the more one-on-one connection. And maybe that's the, you know, the thing, the connection, the meeting that then takes your project to the next level.
Mhm. Cool. So I watched your TED Talk, and in your TED Talk, you touched upon something, and then I don't think that you were able to elaborate because of the time, but you talked about that there's a difference between confidence and self-worth.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know from your viewpoint, what does that mean? Because I think that there is a difference. And I think for writers, sometimes we, you know, we may have self-worth, but not confidence, or we may have that false confidence, but not inner self-worth. So can you talk about those two?
Yeah. So first of all, I love that you picked up on that in the talk, and yeah, I realized, oh yeah, I don't have time to
Get really into that. Yeah.
So what I meant by that, and this will address your question, was that I think you just used the term false confidence. I think people can have what we would call false confidence. You can have kind of that bravado. You can have like short-term confidence, like I'm going to go into this thing and I'm going to, you know, hit it out of the park, or right. And so I think there's a bit of a, it's like a sprint, like a short-term thing. It's not necessarily a sustainable thing, right? Self-worth, right? That's coming more from the inside. So that's about valuing yourself from the inside out, that then brings or then emits a confidence.
Right.
And for women, now I'm going to speak to, I know we have men here, of course, but I think it applies to both of us, frankly, but I'm going to speak from, since my work is focused on women, and I can speak to that very well. So I want to be able to serve the women here in that way. You know, this is a chronic thing women deal with, is self-worth and self-value. And this is, you know, there's a long history to show us why this is the case. And, you know, society has been set up, particularly through, and I'm not knocking on anyone's religions, but particularly from the religious perspective, really no matter, most religions, let's say, where you know, the man is at the top and the woman is either the, you know, creator of sin and evil, or, you know, or to be stoned or violated, or right, like it's really set in those old texts. This is written outright, and so the stories that have been written and told and that get perpetuated in our current culture through media and entertainment, perpetuate this story of valuing women less, you know, objectifying women, valuing women's talents and skills and voices less, it being okay to violate women. You know, these stories, we know, right? This goes on and on and on. So it's a lot to work against as a woman, particularly in media and entertainment, which, as we know, is such a male-dominated industry. So the men, I want to bring you into this piece of conversation. And first off, just to know how hard it is for women sometimes to even use their voice. I mean, some women have fear of death. I mean, there's a history of of women being killed for speaking out about what they believe in, right? This goes through the centuries, and this is happening still today. And so focusing back on the self-worth and self-value and the difference between confidence. So for women, I have found, and this is the work that I do, it can take quite a bit of work to get to a place where you really start valuing yourself. And this is why I told the story about the divine feminine and my own journey to self-worth and self-value. Because once we start learning about this part of our history, herstory, and that there was a whole world civilization pre-patriarchy where women were revered, where women were leaders, political leaders, economic leaders, spiritual leaders, right? We're not taught this. And so it gives women a new understanding of themselves. And it's not even just pre-patriarchy. I mean, I'm learning a lot right now. My family, I have a Quaker lineage. And I didn't grow up practicing Quakerism, but it was always just kind of around. And I'm doing a lot of family lineage study right now. My father recently passed away, and it's his side of the family. It was Quaker, and they believe in gender equality. I mean, I'm having these women who were like 10 generations back in England at the start of Quakerism, where my lineage, they were ministers. They were female ministers. The Quakers believed in equality, and they believe in peace and nonviolence, and it explains a lot of why I have the beliefs I do that I didn't quite track back then. But anyway, my point there is that for women, getting back to self-worth and self-value and confidence is, for the men in this webinar, whatever we'll call it, workshop, to have some compassion for women, that it can be really hard to value yourself when you're in a room full of men. And the support that can happen when we come together as women and men, and for women having compassion for men, because we know as well that men have been put into a box and told you can't emote, you can't be vulnerable, all of that. And so I think we're in a great place now to really support one another with this collaborative spirit, which can help everyone's self-worth and self-value. Because like I said in the beginning, right, we're made of the masculine and feminine. And if we're only using part of ourselves, let's just say we're using majority masculine energy, then like there's another part of us kind of suffocating, and it's hard to value ourselves if we're not using.
What are those feminine attributes, or the feminine energy? What are some of those things that maybe we're forgetting that we have because we live in a majorly masculine society? And I even find myself being more, holding more of my masculine energy than the feminine energy. So are there specifics that that I'll be like, oh yeah, attributes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first I want to say, there's a spectrum, right?
Sure.
So I just want to acknowledge that. And so if we look at I'm going to speak about it in terms of power, the power models. Okay. If we look at it, different power model, the one that we've, for the most part, been operating out of has been a masculine model, which is, based on male life experiences, male standards, male perspective. That's been more one of domination and power over, hierarchical, finite pie. If I have this, you can't have that, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Domineering, aggressive, violence, right? And so then if we're looking over here at more of a feminine type of leadership, that would be more relational and collaborative and power with,
Mhm.
right? That's the relational piece. And also power too. What do we have the power to do together?
Mm.
Right? And it's not a finite pie. It's not, if I have power, you can't have power. It's actually like, if I'm a candle, let's just say, if I light my candle, I can light your candle and you can light someone else's candle, and then everything gets brighter.
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
So two very different ways of leading. And so the feminine also, we talked about inner voice. So there's an aspect of the feminine. Again, this applies to all the men here, right? Because you have the feminine within you. The feminine has a sense of deep listening. And so whether that's a deep listening to inside yourself, what your inner voice might be sharing, or a deep listening to those in the room,
Mhm.
right? It's like looking beyond what's seen on the surface.
Right.
And that's why many women can be great managers, because they can kind of see, someone might be, oh yeah, I'm fine, blah, blah, right? But they can see beneath the surface of what's really going on, and then try to support those team members in a way that's going to be conducive to the success of whatever project they might be working on. So deep listening, intuitive, collaborative, relational, compassionate, empathetic, right? Because women, although it's been devalued, we've been given space to be allowed to emote and be emotional, right? And so there's an intelligence in that emotion. Our emotions guide us.
Right.
Right. So I could go on and on, but
Well, let's-
there's something to go with.
Right. Well, those are all really good ones, and I think they're good reminders to women and men, but women to hold those values that we do have at the same level as the masculine values that we have.
That's huge. Thank you so much for saying that, Shayna. That's huge for us as women to hold those, because that's really where we get inauthentic, because we crush those, and then we operate out of just part of ourselves, the masculine, and then we end up depleted, adrenal fatigue. I know so many women who work in the industry or in the corporate and end up adrenal fatigue, depression, all sorts of illnesses. So that's so important for the health. And then also for the men to know that, like, value those things in yourself as well, because that can make you an outstanding leader, to have that balance.
Right. In your work, do you work with writers, screenwriters? How could somebody work with you? How do they reach out to you? How can you help somebody who's on here tonight who is thinking like, wow, Tabby's my people, and I want to work with her?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Yes, so I definitely work with writers of all types: book writers, screenwriters, blog writers, article writers, and so forth. And so the majority of my work is one-on-one. I do small group coaching. I also do larger courses, but the larger courses mostly for TEDx speaking. I coach women to become TEDx speakers.
Cool.
So that's another fun thing. So as far as everyone here, I would recommend the one-on-one work. I have an introductory series, which is 6 weeks of coaching. And in that we meet weekly, and I support women. So again, the work is just with women, and helping women find their voice, claim their power or more of their power, and to either launch or complete a project that they've been stuck on, stalled on, right? So there's it's both the inner and the outer work, right? It's the inner work. If someone wants to only do the inner work, that's fine. Usually though, I find most people, there's some project attached to that. And so I support them in the arc of that. And so the way people would get in touch with me is by emailing me at Tabby, Tabby, at tabbybiddle.com.